BBC Radio Oxford.
And on your radio.
The sound of Oxfordshire is
BBC Radio Oxford.
With the news at 6, I'm Sophie Law. An Oxford school's been told to reopen after it was forced to close following a coronavirus outbreak. Years 7 and 11 at Cheney School were told to work from home last week after staff had to self-isolate. But the Regional Schools Commissioner, acting on behalf of the government, has now told it to reopen. Sam Jackson's a parent at the school. He says it's strange to make pupils return so close to the Christmas holidays.
There's actually one effective day teaching left because, the Secretary of State has already given an inset day for this Friday. So there's only one day of school remaining. So why they would force them to all go into school for effectively one day also doesn't make sense, at a time when the risk is high.
We'll be speaking to the head of the school after 7 this morning.
Minutes to 7. BBC Radio Oxford coming up this morning. The Oxfordshire school that closed for Christmas. It's now been told by the government they've got to reopen, even though last time we heard from the head, they've got 40 staff off. There's also the point that they're not actually closed. They've switched to teaching children at home for a few days. Plus, the latest on the bubbles, what you can and can't do. What are you up to then over Christmas? 0808 100 9100. Later, Anneliese Dodds, Shadow Chancellor, MP for Oxford East, here for an MP surgery. Any questions? Get them in early.
Al Ryan.
Every Sunday. It's 7:18. In your news this morning, as Sophie's been telling you, an Oxford school has been told to reopen after it closed following a coronavirus outbreak. Years 7 and 11 at Cheney School were told to work from home last week after staff had to self-isolate. But the Regional Schools Commissioner, acting on behalf of the government, has now told them to reopen. Let's speak to their head teacher, Rob Pavey. Morning, Rob. You and I are making a habit of these conversations, but goodness me.
Good morning.
Can you just remind us what happened last week?
So we had a specific outbreak that started in year 8 and was in one particular tutor group, and it spread from there. And this seems to be a pattern that's occurring in other parts of the country as well at the minute. We've seen that in the news quite a bit. And it led to staffing shortages. So we had last Monday, so 10 days ago, we had 20 staff unavailable. Then by Friday, it was over 40. And this Monday, there were 55 out of 125 staff who teachers and pastoral staff who deal with the kids day in, day out, who were unavailable to come to work. It wasn't just for coronavirus reasons. There were a number of other things in there, but, normal December sickness and so on and so forth. But the staffing levels got to the stage where it simply wasn't safe to keep the school open. So we therefore had to work from home.
But the regional schools, and that's for the rest of term you made that decision, is that right?
Yes, that's right, because it was, we've been helped slightly by the fact that the self-isolation period has come down from 14 to 10 days. In fact, there are now, as of this morning, there are a dozen staff who have come back in, or should be coming back in, assuming they're all well, which makes it possible just about to have year 7 and 11 in today.
How disruptive? Well, first of all, the Regional Schools Commissioner told you were instructed to reopen. What does that mean then? If you'd said no again, it's not, I just can't open the school safely.
Well, I did say that. I did point out several times that this was not choice. I surveyed parents when it became apparent the staffing levels going the wrong way to see what their reaction would be to having to close. Well, we're not closed, I should say that, but to basically most students working from home for the last week, and over 90% were in favour of it. But it's not a choice. It's not done to protect Christmas, although that's a perfectly sensible decision, which I think the school should be free to make. So we said that repeatedly, but unfortunately we were told that this was not in line with government guidance, and if we didn't reopen, the phrase was this would be escalated to ministers for further action. Now, I don't really know what that means, but a ministerial directive, I believe it's a form of injunction or something, a court order, but I believe that the minister was going to use the emergency powers under the Coronavirus Act to force us to reopen. So, but exactly what that would have meant and whether it's legally possible, I just don't know. And it wasn't worth all of the disruption and stress and so on to actually go to court and test this.
Have a listen to this. This is Banbury MP Victoria Prentice, who was on with me yesterday, and Victoria says that it's right, in her view, that schools should stay open.
The government, I think, is very grateful to head teachers, and I think as a nation we've decided that the priority, the one thing we've got to do our level best to keep open is schools, because of the dreadful consequences if we don't. Even these last days of term are very, very valuable.
What's your response to all of this, to the government's position on this, Rob?
Well, and no one disagrees, and head teachers will be the first people to say that schools need to remain open, and that's what we've been doing all term. The difficulty is that this wasn't a choice. If you're missing 40% of your staff, it simply isn't possible to have a secondary school of 1,600 students open and functioning normally. And I'm afraid, it is. It's entirely missing the point saying that, I'm afraid. The other point to make, which again fell on deaf ears, is that we haven't been losing any education time at all, because our online offering is now at a stage where every student can join their lessons with their normal teachers online. And
the physical building's closed, but the school isn't, I suppose, is what you're trying to say.
Exactly. I mean, it's open for anyone who needs to come in. There's childcare problems, connectivity problems, etc., key works and so on, as you'd expect. And then every student is able to join their normal class with their normal classmates and their normal teacher, but they're doing it on Google Meet rather than in a classroom. Now, it's not as good, I'll be the first one to say, it's not as good as it is being in school normally, but it is an awful lot better than coming into school physically, having a series of cover lessons not done by specialists, possibly having to get large numbers of agency staff in who anyway aren't available. So the point is that we weren't disrupting our children's education. In fact, quite the reverse. By moving to online with all classes carrying on as normal with their proper teachers, and we're teaching right up to the last lesson. We're not taking an inset day. We're not losing time or anything. So in fact, having to reopen today is actually more disruptive to children's education than if they stayed at home, because I don't have all of the normal class teachers available to teach the children this morning. So there's going to be a number of ad hoc classes and a number of cover lessons, and they are not going to get as good an education by being in the building today as they would if they'd stayed at home.
Rob, it's such a difficult job that you've got at the moment at this time of year as well. Thank you very much. I hope you have an okay last few days without these frustrations, if possible. Thank you for coming on again this morning. As Rob Pavey, the head at Cheney School, ordered to reopen. If you're a parent with a child at Cheney School, how is this affecting you at the moment, not knowing where you are from one day to the next? I mean, Rob sounds as though he's doing his absolute best there in really difficult circumstances. 0808 100 9100. We asked the Department for Education for a response. They didn't address the case directly, but they said really what Victoria Prentice had to say there, that children's education is a national priority, and that the government has acted in the interests of children since the start of the pandemic. Schools, colleges, early years settings working tremendously, they say, to put protective measures in place, helping to reduce the risk of the virus being transmitted. We've got some more parents coming up from the school through the morning, but 0808 100 9100, same number to let me know. To Sam Jackson. Sam, you're a parent at the school. What do you make of all of this toing and froing?
Well, I think it's appalling, actually, that the management of the risk from COVID, the student staff and of their families, has been taken away from the head teacher and his team. I have to say, I have full faith in Mr. Pavey and his team. They have done an excellent job in keeping the school fully open and students attending lessons, and it has clearly been his drive to keep students at school, and quite sensibly and in line, I'm sure, with their very detailed risk assessments. They have made the hard decision to switch to full online learning, and I have two children at that school. Both of them are full-time in lessons all through the day online. They are fully supported by the teaching staff, but they are secure in an isolated environment. So yeah, I think the Secretary of State and acting through the local education commissioner has done this without any assessment of risk. And I believe potentially there is a breach of statutory duty to staff, students and their families by taking this action.
We're hearing many similar stories of these decisions now. This centralised policy of schools must open no matter what. There were cases in London of the schools in Greenwich, again, that were threatened with legal action. What are other parents saying to you, Sam? I know you were so moved by all of this that you wrote to your local MP, you wrote to Anneliese Dodds, didn't you? And she's on after the news. What would you say to her? I don't know if she's had a chance to read your letter yet, but what would you say to Anneliese?
I would ask her to raise the matter with the Secretary of State for Education, because I believe that potentially he is breaching the statutory duty for securing the health and well-being of the students and staff at the school, and that has actually been done for a political decision, not any basis on safety. It's a statement that Gavin Williamson made to say all schools will remain fully open. And that's this political statement. It's not any consideration of risk. And I think Anneliese really should challenge him on that, because there is no basis for risk management here.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'll put that to you'll hear your voice played back to Anneliese just after 9, and we'll let her answer your points. Thank you very much for coming on this morning. I wish your children well for the rest of this week of learning, wherever that takes place.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David.
Thank you. If you're a parent of a child, or indeed if you're a member of staff and you're happy to come on and talk in confidence if necessary, want to drop me a note instead on text and let me know what's going on there at Cheney and how you feel about it. It's a difficult position, isn't it, that staff and parents and teachers are being put in when government says, as we were discussing yesterday, schools must open at the moment, no matter what. There's only a few days left. I mean, a lot of schools finishing today now with the inset day as well. For many children, today is the last day for those that haven't taken up the offer of the inset day tomorrow. On education, briefly, before we get to some calls, there's an Oxford school, I'm sure you'll be aware of this. It's been forced to reopen now, although they say they're not completely closed by the government. It's their premises that are shut. They sent some children home due to 40 out of 100-odd staff not being there. Cheney School in your constituency, it's the head teacher, Rob Pavey, who partially closed the school after a spike in cases. But he's been told now by the Regional Schools Commissioner, acting on behalf of the government, he can't do that. He has to reopen. Have a listen to this, Anneliese. He spoke to me earlier. Here's the head, Rob, saying he's been frustrated by all of this.
I did point out several times that this was not choice, not done to protect Christmas, although that's a perfectly sensible decision, which I think the school should be free to make. We said that repeatedly, but unfortunately we were told that this was not in line with government guidance, and if we didn't reopen, this would be escalated to ministers for further action.
And yesterday, that was yesterday, I heard from Sam Jackson, who's a parent this morning, and he says he'd like you to take up the issue.
I would ask her to raise the matter with the Secretary of State for Education, because I believe that potentially he is breaching the statutory duty for securing the health and well-being of the students and staff at the school, and that has actually been done for a political decision, not any basis on safety. It's a statement that Gavin Williamson made to say all schools will remain fully open. And that's this political statement. It's not any consideration of risk. And I think Anneliese really should challenge him on that, because there is no basis for risk management here.
Will you be challenging the Education Secretary on this?
So yes, I've been in contact with the school, and the head kindly contacted me to let me know what was going on here. I think what's really unfortunate about this is that actually the school did inform the Regional Schools Commissioner that they were getting into a very difficult situation staffing-wise. As we just heard from the head, this was not a choice. It wasn't because of some kind of view about, preparations for Christmas or something. It was because they were so understaffed, because of the number of staff who either had COVID or were self-isolating, which has obviously gone up really substantially over recent times. And unfortunately, I think the response that was received, rather than the commissioner saying, okay, I can see there's severe, challenges here around staffing. Let's work together. Let's try and sort that out. What extra resources could we be providing to try and get this dealt with? Instead, there was just a threat, really, that came back. And I don't think that's the way that we should see the education system being managed. And, I can fully understand why teachers at the school and the head would be pretty irritated by this, because, at this time, everyone's doing their best in difficult circumstances, and this kind of ending up as a politicised process, like the parent said who was just on. That's the worst thing that can happen.
Thank you, Anneliese. More from you in just a moment. Take a breath, do what you need to do. We'll be back in just a few moments. Questions for Anneliese Dodds, Oxford East MP.